From the darkest depths of the pits, I beckon thee, Rogues Gallery agent. Welcome to the Spider. How's it going, Rogues Gallery, and welcome to our very first Assassin Arakni deck tech. This is a brand new class and hero to Flesh and Blood, one that I have been waiting for literally years now, and I am so excited for it. The Assassin class is everything that I hope for, and it is a ton of fun to play. You have a lot of options in the actions that you take, manipulating the top of your opponent's deck so you can fulfill those contracts. As always, I will have a deck list in the description down below, and while you're down there, maybe consider subscribing, ringing that notification bell, or checking out my various affiliate links or my Patreon or channel memberships if you would like to support me directly. Both of them offer a myriad of benefits, including custom emotes for those of you who sign up for the channel memberships for our weekly live streams and in the comment section down below. We also have our online store that has custom Red Zone Rogue playmats, sleeves, apparel, and soon to be some other really nice accessories. I love the Assassin class, so you can definitely expect to see some Assassin themed merch in the very near future, possibly for our 15,000 subscriber celebration, which is coming up very soon. So subscribe, join the Rogues Gallery, equip your experimental black tech whisperers, don your mask of perdition, and join us for our first Assassin deck tech. Let's do it. This is an aggro mid-range version of Arakni. We basically want to take the aggression and try to complete as many contracts as we can, leveraging our powerful equipment and reusing them as many times as we can from the graveyard. This is a very fun deck, but it is one that was a tough nut to crack because it's pretty interesting to build Assassin in Blitz. By the way, if you would like to see Arakni in other formats like Classic Constructed, please let me know in the comments down below. I do have plans to make an Ultimate Pitfight deck for Arakni, as well as possibly Classic Constructed. But I've really enjoyed the challenge that is Blitz. And why is it a challenge? Well, there are many cards in the Assassin suite that care about specific types of cards, fulfilling those specific contracts, and Blitz is a format with no sideboard, so you just kind of have to roll up with what you got and see if you built a deck that can fulfill contracts on your opponent. I do have some ideas with this, and I do have some ways to get around it, but still, in Classic Constructed, that's a format where you could potentially tailor your deck more against your opponent. So let's talk about Arakni, let's talk about what the cards do, and why I think this is so much fun, because we have some of my favorite cards ever printed in Flesh and Blood, and possibly some of my favorite cards ever printed, just in general. So, Arakni. This is Arakni Assassin Young Hero, the standard for Intellect 20 life, and it says, when you play a card with contract, you may look at the top card of target opponent's deck. You may put it on the bottom. So we basically want to do that to both fulfill our contracts, making sure we have stuff on top, or bottoming things that we think maybe a little too scary or we don't want to see, or, you know, possibly messing up our opponent's second cycle if we think we can get there. Honestly, this is Blitz. I have not gotten to a single second cycle with Arakni, so that is something. We're not playing a fatigue deck, we're playing more of a mid-rangey style deck. For weapons, we run the Spider's Bite. This is an incredibly powerful weapon that puts pressure on our opponent in ways that no other weapon does, because this is very strong against equipment. It basically says, hey, you can't block with 1 block equipment, you have to block with at least a 2 block, or it's going to deal damage. And when it does deal damage, it weakens all of the attack action cards if they're used for defense on our opponent's next defend. It says when it hits a hero, the next time they defend with 1 or more attack action cards this turn, those cards have -1 while defending, which is great. So we're pressuring our opponent's hand in multiple ways, right? You either block the Spider's Bite or risk weakening all of your attack actions on the next attack we do. So it's really good. However, it costs 2 to activate. It does have Go again, but that 2 cost means we usually won't be doing this twice, even though this is a one-handed dagger. So I've actually been really enjoying using the Ornate Tezen as my offhand, which is it's a card that you might not know because not a lot of folks are playing with this, but it says instant for a resource, destroy it. You can put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck, and if you do, draw a card. So you basically get to filter 1 card from your deck, and it's great. I've had really awesome turns with this where I'm coming in with an attack and my opponent blocks, right? And then I want to see if I have a reaction. So the other card in my hand is not a reaction, so I can activate the Tezen, put that card on the bottom, and then draw a card and hopefully draw into an attack reaction. And we're running a lot, so there's a decent chance that we hit. So I really like this card. Next up, we have the Mask of Perdition. The Mask of Perdition and the Black Tech Whispers are the linchpins of this deck. It's what makes the deck so much fun, and just, well, like I said, some of my favorite cards ever made. So they both have very similar traits. So they both block for 1 and have Battle Worn. They also both say if they're in the graveyard at the start of your turn, you can destroy 2 silvers you control. If you do, equip them, which is awesome. So basically we want to use them and then keep getting them back as long as we keep getting silvers. So as you would guess, generating silver is a very, very important part of this deck. They also both have attack reactions. The Mask of Perdition, and it says target assassin attack action card gains. When this hits a hero, banish the top card of their deck, so you get an additional banish to help fulfill those contracts. And then the Black Tech Whispers does the exact same thing, except if it hits, then that attack action gains Go Again. So those are the Black Tech Whispers and the Mask of Perdition. Absolute key parts of the deck, which is a little unfortunate for budget builders because you kind of need the Black Tech Whispers because it is just so good. It is so integral. Giving Go Again to your attacks is very important because our attacks don't have Go Again for the most part. And then Mask is just great for helping to banish extra cards. For the equipment piece for the arm slot, we're running Cracker Jacks. Honestly, there's not a lot of options in this slot right now for Assassin. We have Cracker Jacks and then defensive options. So Cracker Jacks, this is our offensive option. I do run this, but I also really, really like running the Ironhide as well. So depending on the matchup, sometimes we could also run the Null Rune. These are your, basically for my take on Arakni, these are your only options here. I do have a Cold Foil Cracker Jacks coming in the mail just to spice up the deck that much more, but I think these are your options. Cracker Jacks for the +1 damage. The +1 is actually pretty good for getting over certain breakpoints. So we do have a couple like blue cards that attack for 3, for example. So, you know, popping a Cracker Jacks into a blue, coming in for 4 is a great breakpoint. And then Ironhide is just really, really good blocking for 2, and you can use it in tandem with your Ornate Tezen, so you can pitch like a yellow card and then use block with your Ironhide and then also still use your Tezen. We're also running some instants that don't block and a couple cards that don't block well, so Ironhide just helps smooth that out to have great blocks. The Null Rune is just you run it if you need to run the Null Rune. Same is true for these other pieces. If we have to, this is our Null Rune suite, right? So if we're running against a wizard, this is our Null Rune suite. We have the gloves, the robe, the lantern, and then the 2 linchpins. We always use these cards. These are so important to the deck. I always run these ones. And so if we are running against a wizard, like I said, we will run the Arcane Lantern as our offhand. So we'll be rocking the Spider's Bite main hand, Arcane Lantern offhand. I really think this is one of Assassin's great strengths right now, is it has the option to use these offhands, which give, you know, the class a lot of utility, which I really, really like. Looking forward to more generic offhands in the future, because any generic offhand that comes out could be an option for Arakni. But yeah, that's when we bring in the Null Rune, just in case we need it. If we're running against like a Rune Blade, I would say bring in the gloves and the lantern. For chest piece, we're running the Fiendel's Spring Tunic. It's really one of the only good options we have. There are some budget options as well, like Vest of the First Fist, but Tunic is just great to get resources over time, and having that one resource on a turn where you can just have one drop, 5 attack card in your hand can be pretty useful. And then we're running the second Spider's Bite in case we really, really think we can get aggro with it. But honestly, I really like running the Tezen or the Lantern. So that is it for our equipment suite. The general equipment suite, just so you know, is these 3 plus either one of these 2 for the most part. And then we have the Arcane suite if we need to run it. But this is kind of like your standard loadout here. Any assassin worth their salt gets paid for their deeds, so you'll need to bring a nice stack of silver. You can really only just bring 1 and use a dice, but having a bunch of silver tokens is pretty handy for all of the contracts that we will be fulfilling. Speaking of those contracts, it's going to make up a bulk of the deck, so let's talk about all of our assassin attack actions and otherwise attack actions. We have more or less about half the deck as attack actions, and the other half of the deck, to some degree, non-attacks, reactions, and stuff that gives our cards go again, because that's very important. So the big key cards for this deck are our majestic assassin attack actions. These are the most powerful contract cards that we have. We have Leave No Witnesses, Eradicate, and Surgical Extraction, and they all care about their own color pitch. So, for example, we have Leave No Witnesses. 0, 4 cost, blocks 3. Every single assassin card blocks for 3, at least in this deck and what is currently printed, and all of the majestic assassin cards all attack for 4. The red is a 0 cost, the yellow is a 1 cost, and the blue is a 2 cost. And so they all have similar mechanics, but they're all very, very strong. So this one has Contract. You're contracted to banish opponent's red cards. When you complete this contract, create a silver token, which means whenever you banish a red card, while Leave No Witnesses is on the combat chain, you will generate a silver token. And that can trigger multiple times. So if you banish multiple red cards while this is on the combat chain, you can generate multiple silver. It also says, when it hits a hero, banish the top card of their deck. Now that's true for every assassin card with contract. You always banish the top card of their deck. But these majestic cards also each do one extra thing. And the red one also banishes up to 1 card in their arsenal. And now if either of those cards are red, you complete the contract and you get a silver. The yellow version of this is very similar, but this one cares about banishing yellow cards, and that's how we're going to shorthand it here. We're just going to say it cares about that type, right? That's what I mean for the contract. So Eradicate cares about banishing yellow cards, and it says when it hits a hero, you banish the top X cards of their deck, where X is the damage dealt by Eradicate. And like I said, as long as the other cards are on the combat chain, you can fulfill those contracts multiple times. So having Eradicate come in with another card already on the combat chain means you can actually generate a lot of silver. So this is a very, very strong card. And then of course we have Surgical Extraction. This card cares about banishing blue cards. And it says when it hits a hero, you banish the top card of the deck, then you get to look at their hand and banish a card. In my experience, you rarely get to actually do that unless you get them with an attack reaction. A lot of folks see this and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna block a bunch. So a lot of the times people block this for, around 6 if they have 2 just cards from their hand, or like a card from their hand and a piece of equipment, or they'll just really overblock it because they want to keep a card in particular. So it's a good card, but a lot of the times people will overblock it because they don't want you to take a card from their hand, which is fair. And so we're running 2 of these as well. And these are like I said, the best contract cards in the deck, the best assassin cards we have. They're all fantastic. These, in my opinion, are must-haves for the deck. If some of them are too expensive, like the Surgical Extraction, you can kind of leave them out for now, but at least try to get the Leave No Witnesses and the Eradicate. They're very, 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 very good. Next up, let's talk about Regicide. Regicide is a card that I don't know how good it is, but I really like it. So it's a 0, attacks for 3, blocks for 3, it's blue. This is the Arakni specialization. It is legendary, which means we can only have one of them in the deck. And it also says, when it hits a royal hero, they lose the game. When the combat chain closes, you lose the game. Hey, if you come with the king, you best not miss. Regicide also can't be defended by cards with the same name as cards in the defending hero's banish zone. So the idea behind this is you banish a ton of cards, and then you can Regicide and make it unblockable because they have too many cards in their banish zone. They can't block with any of them. I would like to also point out that this does not say that this card cannot be prevented, like the damage cannot be prevented. So if you attack with a Regicide and it's unblockable, but they have an Oasis Respite in their hand to prevent the damage, you'll die. So play this card very carefully. A lot of the times, it's just a 3-pitch blue card. We're also running one of my favorite cards ever printed, Enlightened Strike, perennial classic for Flesh and Blood. What's really good about it is it's basically a 1 for 7, but you have options, right? So it costs 0, but it doesn't actually cost 0 because as an additional cost to play it, you have to put a card from your hand on the bottom of your deck. Then you get to choose one. You either get to draw a card, E-Strike gets +2, or it gets Go Again. And I've used all of these abilities, and I think they're all very good. A lot of the times, it's just a 0 for 7, or rather a 1 for 7 because you take a card, but it's really, really good in conjunction with some of our other cards like Cash-In, which lets us draw 2 cards. So, for example, if you have a Cash-In in your hand, let's go grab Cash-In because Cash-In's a key part to this deck. If you have a Cash-In in your hand or in your arsenal and 2 silvers out, you can basically block with everything and still have a decent turn. So what Cash-In is, it's a 4-drop, but it has an alternate cost of destroying 4 coppers, 2 silvers, or a gold instead of paying its cost. Then you get to draw 2 cards and it has Go Again. So why this is so good is if you have 2 silvers out, and we want to have silvers out for our equipment and other things, we can just have cash in those silver, draw 2 cards, and then still have a decent turn. Why E-Strike is good with that is because if you draw E-Strike with cash in, you will always be able to play it because you draw E-Strike plus another card, which means you can at least come in for 7. It's really, really good because of that. I know some other folks like cards like Wounded Bull, which costs 3, attacks for 7, and could get pumped up, or Fiendel's Fighting Spirit, which costs 3 and comes in for 7, and you can maybe gain some life, but those are a little iffy, right? What if you draw 2 red cards? What if you draw a red card and a yellow card? What if you draw one of them and a yellow card? E-Strike, you can always play it off a cash-in, and I really like that consistency. Also, I love the options, the toolboxy nature. I think E-Strike is fantastic for Arakni. Next up, we have the rest of the cards. These are all of our contract cards that are common and rare. These all care about very specific things, and they all kind of do the same thing. So they all say, when it hits a hero, banish the top card of their deck, and then they all care about a different contract card. So, Rob the Rich is a 1 for 5, and it cares about banishing costs 2 or greater. So this is really good against Guardians and Brutes and other heroes that have really, really high costing cards in their deck. So this is actually one of the easier to fulfill contracts, especially because it is a 1 for 5. So we actually running the 2 reds, a yellow, and a blue. And we do this for another card too, which is the next one, Annihilate the Armed. This is probably one of the easiest contracts to fulfill. Once again, it's a 1 for 5. You always banish the top card. And this one says it cares about attack action cards, which a ton of people play attack action cards. Almost all the decks in Flesh and Blood play attack action cards. So we're running the 2 reds, yellow, and a blue. So once again, these are some of like the easier ones to fulfill, so we are running more of them. I would also like to point out at this point that our cards that cost 1 are pretty efficient with our Spider's Bite. So a common play turn would be, you would have, say, any blue card, and you would attack with Spider's Bite, pitching the blue card, floating 1 resource, Spider's Bite, and then you can immediately follow that up with any of our 1 for 5s. And that's just a really good 2-hand turn to help fulfill some contracts and apply some pressure. We have Slay the Scholars, which is pretty good. This is a 0 for 4. This one cares about non-attack actions, so still pretty good. It hits a decent amount of the time, but more decks run the attack actions than non-attack actions. So we are running just the red and then 1 of the blues. I actually really like the blue coming in for 2 because it gives us good breakpoints with one of our reactions called Shred, and we'll talk about that when the time comes. We also have Plunder the Poor. This is the opposite of Rob the Rich. This is a 0 for 4, and this one cares about cards that cost 1 or less. So, basically those aggro decks, you got your Briars and your Ninjas and all that kind of stuff. So we are running 2 of the reds and 1 of the blues. You can see kind of a pattern here. Once again, the blue still comes in for 2, but it does make a nice breakpoint with Shred, which we'll talk about later. And then the final one we have is Sack the Shifty. Maybe one of my favorite names as well. So it's a 0 for 4. This one cares about contracting Go Again cards, so banishing Go Again cards, which is hit or miss. Some decks really run a lot of Go Again cards, some decks don't run any. So it depends on what you're playing against. And it says with base Go Again, so not cards that like gain Go Again, they have to have base Go Again. So we're just running a single Sack the Shifty. This is a card that we might run more depending on how things break down. And then I mentioned it briefly, but yes, cash in, we're running 2 cash-ins. These are a linchpin of the deck as well. All right, every other card in the deck is some sort of instant or attack reaction or something that gives us go again. So actually, let's talk about Captain's Call first. This is the call that I'm most dubious on. This is the card that I might cut for something else, but I'm not sure right now. It's a 0-drop, and it says, choose one. The next attack action card with cost 1 or less gains +2, or the next attack action card with cost 1 or less gets go again, which is basically everything in our deck, with the exception of the Surgical Extraction. It is a yellow card, which is great, so we can, at least pitch it to attack with our Spider's Bite. So it's a good way to get go again. It's a good way to pump, but it's not a big pump. I'll also be really, really clear here. You want to have the contract cards all on the combat chain. So breaking the combat chain can be a little iffy if you're trying to complete multiple contracts. So non-attacks are the best thing to do at the start of your turn, kind of like the cash in here, unless you have to. So starting the turn with a Captain's Call and then proceeding is usually the way to go. We also have a bunch of reactions, like a bunch of reactions, and then Art of War. Let's talk about Art of War first. Art of War is one of the best cards in Flesh and Blood, in my opinion. It will eventually one day be more valuable than Command and Conquer, mark my words here, because it is a very unique card that goes in so many decks and is very, very powerful. So it's a 1-drop, it's an instant, and it says choose 2. As you can see, I love cards with options. This one says, attack action cards you control get +1 attack and +1 defense. You can also give your next attack action card go again. You could also maybe defend with the attack action card in your arsenal if you have to, in a pinch. Or you can banish an attack action card from your hand and then draw 2 cards. So the modes that I normally choose, +1/+1 and go again are really good, as well as the banish and drawing 2. A lot of the times I will do the go again and the banish draw 2, but it really depends on your hand and what you have going on. There are some situations where I was able to play Art of War, banish the last card in my hand, draw 2 cards, and I was like, okay, do I choose go again or do I choose +1/+1? I choose go again if I think I have 2 0-drops in my hand, or I would draw 2 0-drops. You choose +1/+1 if you think you only can play one of the cards. So it's kind of interesting here. I actually chose +1/+1, and it ended up working out pretty well. All right, so yeah, Art of War. It's really good. It's super versatile. It's an incredible card. Next up, we have Razor Reflex. This is one of the first cards that I thought about when I saw Assassin. So 1-drop, reaction, you can give a dagger +3, which is pretty good, or you can give an attack action card with cost 1 or less +3, and then if it hits, go again, which is great because we need to hit, and we need to get go again. So yeah, we are running 2 of the red Razor Reflexes. So here is Shred. This is a card that I mentioned a few times, and this card is 1, incredibly brutal, and 2, very sweet. So it's an assassin card, so it blocks for 3. It costs 0 to play, and it just says target card defending an assassin attack gains -3 this combat chain. That's the yellow, and then the blue says that card will gain -2. And so the blue in conjunction with another blue attack actually gives you that 4 breakpoint, which is pretty nice. So if you're coming in with like this plunder, right, just plunder for 2, and you have a shred in your hand, well, you can shred it and then make it that 4 breakpoint, which is nice. So you can actually complete the contract. Yeah, I really like the blue shred. It's blue and it still gives you that -2 here. I really love the design space on these because they don't technically pump up the damage of your attack, but they just make your opponent's defenses weaker, and they're very strong. So yeah, shred is fantastic. The yellows and the blues are just so good. And then last but not least, we have Cut to the Chase. This card's awesome. So this is one of the best attack reactions they've ever printed, I think. It's a 0 for a +3, already really, really good compared to something like Razor, which is a 1 for +3, and it has an effect, like a good effect. So the effect is another Arakni trigger, basically. It says, look at the top card of the defending hero's deck, you can put it on the bottom. So it helps you fulfill those contracts. It's a 0 for +3, and it blocks for 3. The yellow is a 0 for +2. These cards are really, really good. So we are running a good number of pump cards here. Most of them are reactions. You definitely want them to be reactions or instants so you don't break the combat chain here. And so you can see we have a lot of action and a lot of responses, right? So we can be aggressive, and we need to be aggressive, but we can kind of block up if we need to, because almost all of our cards block for 3. You'll also note that I didn't put any defense reactions in the deck, which is, just kind of like a personal preference. I tend to be more aggressive than defensive, but that's where you want to leverage your equipment because they block for 1, and then you can, you know, get those nice break points here, blocking for a 3 plus 1 of these to get that 4, and getting them back multiple times if you can still be aggressive enough to generate the silver from our contracts. So that is my Arakni Assassin deck. Oh, I love this deck. It is so much fun. It is my current favorite deck to play. I love the Assassin class. I'm currently in the process of foiling it out, if you didn't notice. Should be foiled out in its entirety very soon. And the play patterns are pretty fun. So a lot of the time you just come in with your Spider's Bite pitching a blue, and then try to follow that up with any of our Assassin cards afterwards. Hopefully you can give them Go again, or banish some stuff to fulfill some contracts, so you can keep up the silver generation and keep the pressure going. One of the things I love most about this deck is leveraging our cash-ins, because we can block heavily on a turn, block with everything, keep a cash-in, and then play the cash-in, get rid of 2 silver, and still have a pretty nice turn, where otherwise we wouldn't have been able to. So yeah, I really like this deck. I recommend building it and trying it out. Like I said, it's a lot of fun. This is my first take on the deck. Literally, this class came out a week ago, so I'm sure I will change a lot of stuff over the next couple of months leading up to the next Flesh and Blood set. I'm so stoked that the Assassin class is here. I can't wait to hear your opinions of this in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of Arakni, what you think of Assassin, and these awesome pieces of equipment. Like I said, these are some of my favorite pieces of equipment ever made, if not some of my favorite cards ever printed in any card game, especially this Black Tech Whisperers. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell, check out all that other stuff down below, and we'll see you next time.